a 4 trillion people, while 1.4 billion human beings share the remaining half. If that sounds like development to you, you have been trained to accept violence quietly, politely, economically. Because this is not development, this is developmental terrorism, spiritual, social, and economic, because hope without a blueprint is just another product. Definition of development: more GDP, more consumption, more billionaires, more growth stories. But real development is not how high the numbers go. Real development is how widely life improves. If the system produces a tiny peak and a massive valley, that is not a success model. That is a civilizational failure. When wealth concentrates in a few hands, life itself gets lost in transactions. Because chronic capitalism is not just an economic structure, it is a cognition. I own, therefore I am. I accumulate, therefore I exist. And everyone else becomes a means, not a being. Let me name the syndrome precisely. Chronic capitalism is the obsession with ownership of land, of housing, of information, of attention, of human time, until the system becomes a machine that converts living beings into assets. That is why work is no longer about contributing to society. Work becomes survival, and survival becomes servitude. Now, let me show you the mathematics of this violence. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, has given us the precise diagnosis. In the United States, 1% of Americans hold 30% of the wealth. 50% of Americans hold just 2% of the wealth. In Europe, the top 1% hold 42% of the wealth. Canada sits between Europe and the US. Australia mirrors Europe's inequality. This means 50% of Americans, Canadians, Europeans, and Australians are just grinding and not enjoying life. And here's what the system doesn't want you to understand. The bottom 50% are not losers. Yes, roughly 10% face homelessness and severe mental health crisis, but the other 40%, they are victims of chronic capitalism's design. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, states it very clearly. Chronic capitalism is designed to leave 50% of the population to rot and die, not as a conspiracy theory, as an observable outcome. And this grinding doesn't just destroy bank accounts. What gets destroyed first? Families, health, and the most silent casualty, consciousness. When a human being is forced to run for decades without inner space, without community, what is produced? Not a citizen, not an enlightened contributor. What is produced is a burnt out consumer, a body that functions, a soul that is postponed. And this is not progress, this is slow violence. Now, I want you to sit with one uncomfortable fact. With the technology that we have today, nobody should be sleeping hungry. Nobody. When hunger continues, it is not a shortage of food. It is a shortage of consciousness and policy. And so when you say poverty eradication is a policy decision, you are not giving a motivational slogan, you are giving a diagnosis. And the continued existence of hunger becomes the clearest evidence that the current system is not designed to serve life. It is designed to serve accumulation. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, names the hierarchy of exploitation with precision. First, chronic capitalism exploits nature, cutting the trees and plants. Second, it exploits animals, fish, cows, and calves for beef. Third, it exploits humans, those who have less opportunity, those low in society. And this is not random violence. This is systematic extraction, layer by layer, being by being. And when you live in the United States, Canada, Europe, or Australia, you may think you are in the richest countries. But many rich people just happen to live there. The wealth exists, but it is not distributed. It is imprisoned in the hands of the few. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, revealed that Sanatana Hindu Dharma does not reject wealth. Sanatana Hindu Dharma rejects hoarding. It rejects wealth that expands the ego and shrinks the society. It rejects profit that demands exploitation. It rejects growth that eats the human being. So what is authentic development? The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, gave the definition clearly, and today I will amplify it. Real development is when knowledge, expertise, and wealth get democratized, not hoarded. Real development is when poverty and hunger eradication become policy decisions, not accidental outcomes. Real development is when social, cultural, and spiritual capital flows freely among all beings. Because in a Dharmic civilization, the economy is not the master. The economy is the servant. A servant to what? To the highest purpose, to spiritual awakening, to enlightenment. And this is the difference between a market civilization and a Dharmic civilization. In the market civilization, human beings are trained into profit addiction. In the Dharmic civilization, human beings are trained into conscious contribution. Sanatana Hindu Dharma is radical in a way modern systems cannot digest. It insists that wealth generation should enhance collective consciousness, not collective propaganda, but collective consciousness, meaning the way we produce, we trade, we distribute, we consume must make human beings more peaceful, more complete, more responsible, and more capable of compassion, not less. Now, let's get specific. Let's dive into KAILASA's framing and the contributions of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam. KAILASA fosters a governance structure rooted in Sanatana Hindu Dharma, including the Universal Hindu Parliament, the Hindu Parliament with functional sabhas, including a prosperity resource development department, the Kanaka Sabha, which is a dharmic prosperity engine rather than a corporate extraction engine, the Reserve Bank of KAILASA, a Hindu principles-based institutions exist to centralize and responsibly channel wealth flows to support dharmic ecosystem. And the economics of KAILASA outlines a direct dharmic principle that aligns perfectly with this. Anything that increases in value by being shared should be freely available to all. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, explicitly gives examples such as education and open source knowledge. In KAILASA, all the necessities that are needed for survival, such as food, shelter, clothing, education, and healthcare, are provided completely free of cost. This is the opposite of chronic capitalism's knowledge hoarding. This is knowledge as liberation. KAILASA's constitution also explicitly states that society should provide the basic needs such as food, water, shelter, clothing, grounded in responsibilism and activism. So dharmic development here is not a poetic idea. It is presented as institutional intent. It is how KAILASA functions now. And here is why this matters urgently. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, has warned. The world is getting delusioned with chronic capitalism. The next 25 years is the critical time to revive KAILASA-centric consciousness, because if we do not act, if the bottom 50% continue to be left to rot, they will not stay quiet. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, says it directly. If we do not build deep, spiritual, rooted, loving communities, if the bottom 50% is not given hope, they will not remain passive. Urban Naxals will rise, and if even 10% take up weapons, the rest of the 40% will not be able to live peacefully. This is not fear-mongering, this is a pattern recognition. And the alternative? The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism calls for it clearly. The bottom 50% of the world needs KAILASA's lifestyle. They need to be taught responsible democracy. They need to spend the whole day trying to be centered in Paramashiva. KAILASA citizens are the living solution for the 50% abandoned by chronic capitalism. Now for the solutions, not vague, not awareness, not hashtags. A spiritual abundance precedes material prosperity. A civilization that worships scarcity will weaponize money. A civilization rooted in spiritual abundance will naturally share. And that is why the institution of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, matters. Freedom comes through completion, because the greed pattern is not merely personal. It becomes policy when millions remain incomplete. So the first economic reform is inner reform. Completion with greed, completion with insecurity, completion with the identity that says, if I don't hoard, I will not survive. When that cognition dissolves, sharing becomes natural, not forced. Now, making hunger eradication a non-negotiable policy outcome. If food is optional, spirituality becomes luxury. Sanatana Hindu Dharma doesn't accept that. KAILASA's Annadan framing makes the spiritual cognition explicit, food as sacred, feeding as civilizational responsibility. KAILASA's Annalayas and Annamandirs function as a systematic distribution approach, not merely ceremonial charity. Over 2 billion free meals have been served globally by KAILASA so far. And when it comes to democratizing knowledge and expertise, chronic capitalism gates knowledge behind paywalls, credentials, and monopolies. The Dharmic alternative is the opposite. Knowledge must flow to all corners of the society. Positions its educational ecosystem as part of that mission, and KAILASA explicitly endorses the principle that shareable knowledge should be freely available, rebuilding the economy around contribution and not exploitation. The Dharmic economy is not anti-wealth, it is anti-exploitation. It asks one question that destroys chronic capitalism. Does this economic activity enrich life, or does it extract life? And it insists the economy must serve health, spiritual practice, family stability, community upliftment, ecological non-violence. And let me say this plainly. A civilization that calls exploitation efficiency, that calls burnout ambition, that calls hunger inevitable, is lying. And it lies so constantly that people begin to think that suffering is normal. Suffering is not normal, it is normalized. And if a few individuals globally can hold wealth at a scale that distorts an entire nation's life while billions share what remains, that is not economics, that is structured violence. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, does not mince words. Chronic capitalism is designed to leave 50% of the population to rot and die. And it's not just economic design, it is biological sabotage. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, has stated that food is designed to make you fall sick. You are forced to fall sick and then forced to go to the doctor. This is not healthcare. This is a profit cycle built on your suffering. We are all busy with our small problems. We are not looking at the larger picture. But the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, has warned that the rapid descent into ignorance is moving very fast. In the last 7 years, the top 10 economies are suffering from chronic capitalism, which is designed to leave the 50% to rot and die. This is the emergency, not in 50 years, but now. Now, what can you do? What can you start immediately? First, stop glorifying the 70-hour servitude. Refuse the cognitive slavery. If your work destroys your health and relationship, it is not dharma. It is depletion. It is destroying lives. Second, make no hunger your local policies. Support and build food sharing networks, not occasional charity systems. Anadan is a dharmic civilizational duty. You can contribute to KAILASA's free food institutions, to the Anna Mandirs. Third, democratize one piece of knowledge. Teach a skill for free, mentor someone, open your expertise. Become part of KAILASA, where all of this knowledge is being shared for free by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam. Get enriched and enrich others. Because knowledge grows by sharing, that is explicitly articulated as a dharmic principle in KAILASA's economic framework. Fourth, audit your consumption. Every purchase is a vote. Choose non-violent, choose sustainable, life-enriching economic choices wherever possible. Fifth, inner completion practice. Completion greed patterns within yourself. Let your consciousness become the source of your security, not hoarding. And here we invite you to attend the Paramashiva Sena program, where you can learn how to empower your consciousness. You can scan the QR code that you see here on the screen, fill out the form, and we will reach out to you on how you can attend the Paramashiva Sena program. And sixth, engage with KAILASA's vision. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism says that I want KAILASA to be a community responsible to humanity, at least do something for humanity. He says that I want KAILASA citizens to be leading humanity and finding solutions to modern day problems that from Sanatana Hindu Dharma. So if we start reaching out to people, people can come to KAILASA. KAILASA citizens are the living solutions for the 50% that is left to rot by chronic capitalism. If development creates billionaires and destroys families, it is not development. If growth expands GDP and shrinks human dignity, it is not growth. Sanatana Hindu Dharma offers an authentic alternative where spiritual abundance precedes material prosperity, where knowledge flows freely, where nobody sleeps hungry, and where economics is designed to awaken, not to addict. This is Dharmic development, and this is the future worth building. Thank you.